Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to another movie review, and today we'll be talking about the 2024 Netflix exclusive animated movie, Ultraman Rising. It's been a while since Ultraman Rising came out, it's been a little over a month, but the reason why I wanted to wait to talk about this movie, and this goes for every other, movie review that I've done. So there are a couple of reasons. First of all, movie reviews are tougher to do than figure reviews because with figure reviews, I can talk about the figure on camera and I can actually show you, physically show you what I'm talking about on camera. With movie reviews, I'm mostly going off of notes and muscle memory. So it's a little tougher to talk about something just from my mind than it is something that's, right in front of me physically. Another reason why I wanted to wait to talk about this movie is because I sort of want to process what I watched, just like with Gamera Rebirth. Gamera Rebirth, that show came out in September of last year, and I didn't review it until a couple months ago. And, same with Ultraman Rising here. This movie came out back in June, and I'm just now talking about it because I wanted to process what I watched. I wanted to, really think about it until I felt comfortable with what I wanted to say. And now, I'm at a point where I've thought about it, I process what I watch, and now I think I'm at a point where I can, properly talk about this movie. So, yeah. And one more thing I want to say, this video will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, then I recommend clicking off and watching the movie and then coming back. If you don't care about spoilers, then and if you don't care about spoilers and you want to stick around, then stick around. This movie is mostly for the people who have seen Ultraman Rising and just me giving my thoughts. So again, if you don't want to be spoiled, click off. If you don't care, then yeah, do what you got to do. I don't really care what you do at the end of the day. Do what you got to do. But I digress. Anyway, I don't really have a whole lot else to say, so let's just get right into this. Starting with the characters. So to start, we have our main character, Kenji Santo, which he's likable enough. I think he feels a little generic, but for the most part, I do think he works as, the main character. I do think he's likable enough, and, he goes through a really nice character arc of, not just becoming more mature, but also being able to balance his life between playing baseball, being Ultraman, and taking care of his adopted kaiju daughter, Emmy. So, yeah, I do really like that. Kenji, again, a little generic, but overall, Kenji, I think, is a really likable character. Then we have Kenji's dad. He's alright. He plays the supporting role to Kenji. He helps Kenji, raise Emmy. And I think he's okay. I do think, the growth between his and Kenji's relationship throughout the movie, I think is really nice. But, again, as a character, I don't really have a whole lot to say about him. Then we have Ami Wakita. And she's okay. She's Kenji's love interest in the movie. And I think they should have focused on her a little more, because there are one or two moments where they interact in this movie and it feels impactful, but for the most part, I didn't really feel anything. I wish they did a little more with Ami, but I digress. I do wish that they interacted more and just kind of built off that relationship a little more. Maybe in the sequel if that happens, but we'll just have to wait and see. Then we have Dr. Onda, who is the antagonist of the movie, and I think he's great. Solely because he's not, generic, where he wants power, or he wants money, or whatever. This man, he lost his family in a kaiju attack, and Ultraman wasn't able to save his family. So, a lot of the things that he does is, acting from that. And during the final battle, when, he's explaining to Ultraman, why he's doing what he does, during that final battle, it's really impactful. It's really good. So, Dr. Onda, I think, is a great antagonist. I wish he had more screen time, but besides that, he is great and probably my favorite character in the movie. So, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the characters. Now I want to talk about the soundtrack of the movie. And the soundtrack of the movie, it's good. It's definitely not John Williams or Akira Ifukube level of great, but as it is, I think it's good. It's distinct enough to stand out on its own, and I think it does the job nicely. So overall, the soundtrack, it's good. I like it. Now I want to talk about the writing, and It's about on par with Godzilla King of the Monsters, minus all of the try-hard, like, attempts at humor. The keyword being humor, because the jokes in King of the Monsters, like a lot of the comedic moments, it's bad. It's really bad. I love Godzilla King of the Monsters, but the humor in that movie, it hurts. It just hurts to listen to. But here, like, it takes itself seriously enough, but there are also plenty of very lighthearted moments. So it's not edgy just for the sake of being edgy or just goofy, like, over the top. Like, it's a nice balance, and I do like that. So yeah, the writing, I think, is very solid. Now we want to talk about the animation, and the animation here is very good. The movements are nice and fluid. The art style looks very, very dynamic. It looks very much so inspired by the Spider-Verse films, and like it's just a very pretty movie to look at. Like the use of blues in this movie, like especially, are really good. There are scenes where like it's nighttime and it's dark, and like all you can see are like the blues from like Ultraman's eyes just shining, and it like visually it looks very good. So overall, the animation here is actually very impressive. So I do really like the animation here. Spider-Verse, I think, looks better. Because I brought up Spider-Verse earlier, I just want to say I do think that Spider-Verse looks better, but well, it's Spider-Verse. Like it's one of the better looking animated films, like as of recent. Both of them. So yeah. Now I want to talk about the sound design, and the sound design I think is good. You know, the original sounds they use for all of, like the new monsters and returning monsters, I think works out nicely. But they also do use some like sounds from the original Ultraman series. So yeah, and it's nice to hear those. But overall, the sound design, it's good. It gets the job done. Now, I want to talk about my overall negatives with the movie. I want to talk about the negatives before I talk about the positives. And I don't have a whole lot to say here, luckily. So let's just get into this. So earlier I was praising the art style. I thought the art style looks very good, and I still do. I think the art style here looks great. The colors, overall, the art style here is amazing. But I want to talk about Spider-Verse again for a second here. Spider-Verse had this very, like, comic booky sort of look. Um, Many of the textures in the show had, like, these, like, dots on them to give off that, like, comic book look, and it just looked very good. And I think they attempted that here, but at certain points, it just made the film look just kind of grainy and like not at all great. Like overall, the art style still looks great. The character designs, overall, like visually speaking, like this is mostly a very good looking movie. It's just like that grainy look that comes from like this attempted like Spider Verse sort of look just didn't really stick the landing for me. But I digress. The post credit scene I was not a big fan of. It wasn't bad by any means, but I just don't like post credit scenes. To me, they just feel very cheap. They feel very like, very just it just feels very corporate in my opinion. A lot of movies do post credit scenes now just to hype up like the next movie or whatever. And to me, again, it's just like I don't know. To me, post credit scenes they just feel cheap, but I digress. So, yeah. Too many references in this movie. Like most of them are in the background, so on paper, it's not the end of the world, but there is a lot going on. Like just too many references for me. I don't hate references, like references I think can be like, neat, they can be cool little callbacks, but in this movie, there are so many references to the original Ultraman, which kind of makes sense because based on what I've read, originally this originally wasn't going to be an Ultraman movie. This was actually going to be like not a parody, but like an Ultraman inspired movie where it would have been like the same like human transforms into like a giant that fights kaiju, but they're going to be like their own thing, pretty much like Gigaman and Gigabash, where like it was going to be like an original hero fighting original monsters, and apparently no one wanted to pick up the movie, so I guess Netflix kind of suggested, well, why don't you just contact Subaraya and see if you can just make it an Ultraman movie? And obviously Subaraya said yes, and now I think it's at a point where or it was at a point where they tried to make it feel as Ultraman-y as possible, so they tried to not just rewrite the script, but just fit a bunch of references to the original show. Because like in the background you have like figures of like all of like the older like Ultraman monsters. So many, like, just name drops. The kids in this movie constantly say should watch, and overall, I don't know. I just think there are too many references. In the sequel, maybe they could just kind of like dial that down a little bit, but and again, like the references, they're not bad by any means. Like they're neat, nice little like callbacks to the original show. It's just they're a little too many for my liking. But I digress. The last thing I want to talk about here is kind of like with the MonsterVerse films, like the movie, it's not about what Ultraman represents, but instead it's just about Ultraman. And what I mean by that is Ultraman, like in most of like the Ultra shows, the original Ultraman, Ultra 7, Ultraman Tiga, Dyna, etc. Ultraman represents hope, and hope itself represents like the light that shines through the darkness. And the darkness represents like, despair and hopelessness. And Ultraman is, that hope, to be hopeful for the future, you know? And here in Ultraman Rising, it's just about Ultraman just being a parent, there is the commentary of like, the struggles of being a parent and like the challenges that come with being a parent, which I liked, but again, it doesn't feel like Ultraman to me. I wish it was more so about, what Ultraman represented rather than just it being about Ultraman. So, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it for my overall negatives. Now, I want to talk about my overall positives with Ultraman Rising. And right off the bat, I just want to say, for this being the first Ultraman movie made in America, I think it's really cool that it actually ended up being animated. Really, like, beautifully animated, might I add. In the 90s, there was this one, like, American-made Ultraman show that ironically didn't even air in America. I forget where it aired exactly, but it didn't air in America, which I thought was very funny. But, the less said about that show, the better. And originally, again, in the 90s, there was going to be an American-made Ultraman movie, and the main character was going to be Will Smith, which it makes sense because he actually said in interviews that he actually grew up watching Ultraman, but the idea of Will Smith being the main character in an Ultraman movie to me just sounds so funny. I don't know why. It just cracks me up. But still, overall, like, for this being the first American-made Ultraman movie, I think it's really cool that it's not only animated, but really well animated. So that alone, I think, is really cool. Um, I also like the unique portrayal of Ultraman in this movie. So basically, like, usually with Ultraman, like, so it's usually like a human turns into Ultraman, but like the human host, like I'm just using this as like an example. Daigo from Ultraman Tiga is a separate entity from Ultraman Tiga. And then in Shin Ultraman, like, like the human host, like he's not like it's not the human turning into Ultraman, it's like Ultraman turning into the human to, coexist with, his like, the other characters in that movie. Here, like Kenji here, like he turns into Ultraman as if like it's just another form. Like he's still Kenji while he's Ultraman, It's different, and I prefer, admittedly, I do prefer how they usually handle it, but still, overall, like I do like it's unique, it's different, but I like it, It adds like something new to the table, and again, I just think it's really like cool and new. So yeah. And also, one more thing I want to say about my positive with the movie. Emmy is really cute, right? I mean, when you stop and think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense how Emmy grows, like, she looks the way she does now and then grows up looking like Gigatron. It makes no sense at all, but, like, honestly, you're not really thinking about that. Emmy is just, like, super cute, and she's great. I love Emmy. So, yeah. So, in conclusion, it's different compared to, other Ultra shows and other movies. It does a lot of things differently, but overall, I still think it's very solid. I mentioned this when I talked about the writing. It's about on par with Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I mean that as a compliment, because I actually do really like Godzilla King of the Monsters. In fact, it's one of my favorite Godzilla movies. I know there are some people who really don't like Godzilla King of the Monsters, so take my comparison as you will, but still, overall, I do think that Ultraman Rising is a solid movie. So, out of a 10, I'm going to give it an 8. Because again, not perfect, but still, for what it is, I do think it's good. So, yeah. Anyway, that is it for today. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, Zack out.